So my name's Coll McDonnell, and thank you so much for coming here tonight. Sarah's kindly asked me, as a fellow painter, to join her in an artist-to-artist conversation in front of this exciting body of work. So this is an opportunity for us to discover more about the artist's work from Sarah herself. We will discuss the practicalities of her 3-month residency at Monet's garden, out of which much of this work here springs. So I will be asking Sarah about the creative process which led to this body of work, as well as talking about themes which run through her painting practice more broadly. Our conversation will last about 30 to 45 minutes. It is a total honour for me to count Sarah as a great friend, and added to that, someone with whom I've had an ongoing relationship with about painting. We met, appropriately enough, in the National Gallery about 19 years ago. At the time, I understood Sarah's painting, which was engaging in the figure, landscape, and beyond, as being broadly representational. But there was always an emphasis on light, air, and mystery, which took her work into a different realm. And then, one day, perhaps 10 years ago, during one of our regular phone calls, Sarah said to me, excited, but also, I think, surprised, "You know, Coll, I am increasingly thinking about making abstract paintings." And from then on, I witnessed a direct engagement with the abstract in Sarah's work. And I feel here, in this body of work, there is an oscillation between the abstract and the figurative, which is also present in Monet's later paintings. A critical part of Sarah's painting practice has been her rigorous and committed engagement in the work of other painters, including Rubens, Rembrandt, and Watteau. So the fact that Sarah was awarded the residency at Monet's garden seemed to me to be a natural extension of a dialogue she was already having with some of the greatest painters. I was excited to see how her work might respond to being at Giverny, as up to that point, I had not been aware of Sarah directly engaging in the work of Monet. Tonight, I hope to ask questions you might be asking yourselves, but there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions at the end. But ultimately, I see this as a chance for you to see Sarah's work through her eyes as well as your own. So first of all, Sarah, huge congratulations on this fantastic body of work. And we'll talk about that more later. But first of all, I wanted to take us right back. You started painting when you were 7. And alongside your painting practice, you trained as a scientist and a picture restorer. Could you tell me about how you came to painting?
I think it was inevitable that I would come to painting because my father, my uncle, my aunt, God knows, I mean, everyone around me was painting. It would have been very odd if I hadn't. It was a bit difficult for my brother, who was colourblind, actually. Sometimes one student once said to me, "You don't realise how lucky you are." I have to say, it is lucky, but it's also complicated. Any of you here in a family of a particular profession where you feel the heavy weight on your shoulders? Anyone?
Well, it's a connection we've got.
You've got it.
Yeah, because a lot of people in my family are painters,
Yeah.
so it's something we've spoken
So
about.
it's a mixed blessing, shall we call it that?
Yeah, we've often...
So I learned by just watching what my father did. And I remember one day he was painting the shadows under a hedge in Normandy, and I thought, that's weird, he's just mixed some purple with the green. Why would you? The hedge is green. And so I tried it, put it on, and thought, oh, that works. So it was a lovely way to learn, almost like being a very young apprentice. And it wasn't till later on that I realised I needed to rebel and do something a bit different. So then I became a scientist. It's a very nerdish rebellion.
'Cause just about the science, I feel that our culture is quite keen to distinguish between the sciences and the arts.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering how you felt it might have informed your practice, having trained as a scientist and also as a picture restorer.
Yes, both things affected me a lot. I'm very glad to have done both. Anyone here a scientist? No? No, still a scientist? Gosh, what does that tell us?
Little art gallery.
I think that when you make art, you should be being like a scientist. You're running an experiment. And I had this incredible moment when I was running an experiment and all the results were wrong. And my supervisor said to me, look again at your results because there may be something really interesting happening here. And it was in understanding what was wrong that there was some new information. It was a proper bit of research. And that, I think, can happen with art if we're open-minded and aware that we don't have to know what we're doing before we do it, but we do need to see what happens.
And does it help to have a little bit more of a detached view? I mean, that's the sort of cliche is that scientists are perhaps more rational.
I think the best scientists are very, very creative and emotional about what they do. And I think the best artists are, but they also, any students here, could be more scientific about what they do, in fact. I think we could all be more scientific. I think it's a shame that the arts and sciences are so separated and people feel left out from both. I think a lot of people feel left out from the art world. It seems a bit elitist, maybe? I don't know, something. And the science world too, there's much more that could be done to bring, you know this, don't you, Annabelle? Yeah.
I often think that being a painter can be quite a solitary profession. What do you like about painting?
I really like being solitary. I like being on my own. Sorry, David. I think there's something so... when you've got time in which to try something out and notice what happens, you just become more at peace with yourself, and it's the only thing we've got is time, if you really think about it. And we're always rushing around pretending that's all fine, but actually time is precious, isn't it?
Definitely,
So I might get a bit deep.
Well, talking about getting deep, I often, this is something I grapple with as a fellow painter, is having faith in what one produces and in oneself. How do you maintain your faith as a painter?
I just don't have it. I mean, literally, surely someone in this room must have experienced this. You can, so 9 o'clock in the morning, you decide you're a genius. Then half an hour later, Gwyneth, you'll back me up on this, won't you? Half an hour later, you feel like you're useless. And so it goes like this through the day. And I've begun to think that all you have to do is just ride it and accept that. I'm sure it's true for writers.
Do you think you produce better work when you think you're not a genius? Do you think that's when you're producing your...
Honestly, I have no idea. I think it just comes with the territory. I think you've got to be slightly mad, really. Yes? Can we agree? Some of us with that. I mean, it's a very odd thing to do, isn't it? To be in a room all by yourself with some paint and try and make something that has value. And there's so many other things that would be more sensible. I do think it helps to make a civilized society that people are trying to do that.
I think life would be very limited without art. I think we need it, and we've always made it. But alongside your painting practice, you've been teaching at the Royal Drawing School for 14 years. I was wondering whether whether teaching has actually affected the way you look at your own work.
hugely. Thank you, all my students. I mean, I learned so much from seeing what other people make, from having to put my thoughts into some order through being forced to communicate and having talks with students, and it's been very enriching. What else? Oh, what else did you say?
Well, whether it's making you look at your work differently, but because you're honest,
I've become more open-minded. I'm much more aware of what's going on in the contemporary art world than I was when I was younger, and I think I love being part of an organisation. I think the Royal Drawing School is a brilliant place.
Yeah.
And I feel energised by it. I was teaching all day today in Regent's Park in the full heat of the sun. But it's a wonderful, I'm very lucky.
Yeah, it is a great institution. Yeah. And I'd like to just sort of pivot towards talking about the exhibition here. And words which sprung to my mind when looking at your work were mystery and emergence, erasure and discovery, rhythm and movement, line and colour. And I was wondering whether we could look at some of those ideas in turn. So first of all, mystery. I think can easily get confused with vagueness. I think they're very different things. What would you say was the importance of mystery in your work?
Well, since you suggested this question to me, I've been thinking about it, and I am beginning to wonder whether something mysterious has to be in art, has to be in music, has to be in film, has to be in a book that we read, that we are, after all, in a very mysterious position. I mean, it's very odd being alive and being in this world, isn't it? And I'm slightly allergic to certainty. Certainty seems to me an odder position to take with most things. So I relish mystery because I think it's closer to the truth.
And part of the mystery in your paintings, I feel, comes about through erasure, which you allow to be maintained in the complete finished painting. And I always think it's very brave to include erasure. I mean, in my work, I try to sort of cover up any mistakes, or I don't want it to be seen. I was just wondering what encourages you to leave these erasures there.
I suppose that's where you and I differ. I almost deliberately create the condition under which I will make mistakes. Going back to that scientific analogy, I want mistakes to happen because I think that's when I am completely, if you like, at the surface. Rock surface? What's the expression?
Rock face?
Rock face, yeah. That's the one. And noticing what's actually happening. If I come to make a painting and I think I know in advance how to do it, I'm not really there. And so I only leave an erasure if it serves the whole image.
So you don't have a clear map, as it were, a clear sort of fixed idea of how your painting's going to turn out?
No. I mean, underneath that one there's about 6 other major paintings. They all went horribly wrong.
Do you ever feel sad that you've covered them up?
Yes. Sometimes I think I shouldn't have. But I think that, for me, working in a state of it's a really weird physical sensation of elation and terror. It needs to be happening. Otherwise, I'm not really there. Maybe I've got addicted to that feeling. I don't know. Do you ever have that?
Well, I think we're very different. I mean, I like to, in this regard, like to have a very clear idea of what I'm doing. It goes, perhaps I make too many mistakes. And so if I don't have a sort of roadmap.
Right.
But yeah, that's just...
Well, we're different.
Yeah.
And isn't it lovely that we're different? I mean, I have to say, to have a really good artist friend is a very precious thing. So...
I wanted to ask, in my introduction, I spoke about the oscillation in this body of work between abstraction and figuration. But I was wondering whether perhaps we shouldn't look at work in those terms. Maybe all work, all paintings should be seen as abstract.
Could we say could be seen as abstract? Yeah.
You correcting me?
Well, the world is a very odd place, as I said earlier, and I think that there are these extraordinary rhythms and proportions and relationships between things that are happening, whether we like it or not, all around us. But some people refer to them as the divine proportions, that, you know, they fall out of healthy cell growth, normal growth. And so we're surrounded by a sort of mathematics which provides a sort of a grid almost, or a structure upon which everything floats and is also related to. And so I think that even the most, you could say, figurative paintings, when they work, have got an underlying abstraction, because I think that's what we as humans really know and love.
So is it sort of tapping into some sort of universal rhythms which are sort of fundamental?
Yes, and we are literally part of everything. That's now been decided, by the way, that everything knows about everything else. And so we are intuiting, where we see beauty, I think we're actually seeing connections, deep, deep connections. We don't have to have a degree in physics to think about that.
And I also mentioned rhythm and movement, which is absolutely key to your paintings, but I was also thinking about your actual painting practice, the fact that you move your canvases around the studio and you paint them in different orientations.
Yes. I do think one day one of these pictures will kill me, because they're quite big and I'm sort of on my own, kind of going like this. And then one time I led one against the wall, and as I walked away from it, it whacked me on the back of the head. I don't know why or how, but working in like that diptych over there, having two panels that are the same size as each other is useful, because when you get a bit lost, which you invariably do, you can turn one of them, or you can move the right one to the left and the left one to the right, and then that gives you a moment of surprise and suggests a new direction that you could go in. So I like doing that. It's also quite practical, because I couldn't get something that big into my studio, so you have to sometimes just have smaller panels and then put them together for practical reasons.
So if that goes back to your studio, is it possible that it could end up as a different orientation? Or?
Undoubtedly, it will, yes. And it'll probably get painted over as well. I can guarantee it, but not before the 6 months is up.
Colour is something that immediately strikes me when encountering your work here.
Yeah.
In the time that I've known you, I've seen increasing use of saturated colour. So I was wondering how you arrive at colours. Very struck by your use of colour in this show. And I was thinking to myself that perhaps there's been an increasing use of saturated colour in your work since I've known you. And I was wondering how you arrive at colours if there's no external source.
We also need to talk about Giverny, don't we?
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
Because that had a big influence on my use of colour. Anyone here been to Monet's gardens?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's planted in the most extraordinary manner, apparently exactly as Monet had it, except I think one or two of the, what do you call them? Not species, but types of flowers are slightly changed now, and they can't get hold of the old ones, but it's more or less as he had it. And he painted it as if the garden were a palette. So you'd have a whole row of yellows, all different yellows. You turn the corner, a row of reds. Turn the next corner, and it was a row of purples and blues. So well, it was kind of audacious, but it just made me realise how joyful and how emotional one could get about colour, really, that it has a value just for itself. That's what I got from Monet's from the flower garden, yeah.
And maybe we could just talk about the residency for a bit. So at the residency, it was a 3-month residency, and you had. Could you just talk about your experience of the residency? And because I think you could only paint when the tourists weren't there. Is that right?
Yeah.
Working in the garden.
So when I arrived, I was given the key. It was called the magic key, and it would let me. I could use it at any time to get into any of the gates that lead into the gardens. I had this key, and I don't want to sound like I'm showing off, but it was amazing. In Monet, this is where I was living, the gate to where I was living, and there's Monet's house there, literally just there. And I had a huge studio, my own apartment, and the key. And so I could go into the gardens at 6 in the morning and be completely alone there. I was really quite pleased when there were some gardeners, because you could feel a little bit vulnerable, and Mother Nature will assert itself. And I had this extraordinary Sunday morning. I thought I was all by myself. There were no gardeners, drawing away. And a man walked along the path towards me with a huge gun. And on the other hand, he had this massive animal, sort of long tail, and sort of a huge rat thing. And it's called, what's it called? A muskrat. And muskrats have infiltrated Europe from America. And they eat the water lily flowers. So they have to be shot every morning. I thought, that's interesting. It seems beautiful and peaceful and lovely, but they're these rather scary creatures. They don't normally attack humans, but it did bother me.
And you didn't try to paint it?
No, God.
So you had this relatively small window in the morning when you were able to work outside.
6 till 9.
And then in the evening as well.
At 6 o'clock, and one person who was also at the residency decided that he would paint and draw all night and avoid the daytime completely. So he had a head torch. I thought that was really brave. He did some very good drawings.
And so those oil pastels there is what you...
At the end there, yeah.
And did you actually paint outside at all? Or?
No, I painted in the studio. I just took oil pastels and watercolours, things like that, into the gardens. And I decided that the place that the muskrats wouldn't go on would be the Japanese bridge. I just thought they wouldn't go there. So I sat in the middle of the Japanese bridge quite often and painted the view across the water lily pond. And it became every day it looked different. The light shifted. One day when it was about as hot as this, the pond was covered with a sort of green scum, and it felt very unsavoury. And the light changed completely on that day. And in the evening, when the sun was setting on it, it was like being on another planet. And it was always changing. I could see why Monet was so obsessed by it.
I mean, it seems to me that you were very keen not to sort of be overwhelmed by Monet's language, and that you sort of, I mean, the work that you've done here seems, like the painting here, I very much sort of sense in Monet's garden, but I don't, I think it's a very different language from Monet himself.
Yeah.
Were you sort of keen to do something very other from what Monet did?
Well, I had a wobbly moment and I thought, I'm going to try and do a Monet. And I hated myself for trying, actually, because I knew I had to do something that wasn't like Monet's work for my own sake. He's an artist that one could mimic. His technique's not that complicated. But I had a lovely moment looking at one of his paintings in the local museum for quite a while and thinking about the brushstrokes and realising that he at the time had done something quite remarkable, because his painting didn't look like the place. He had taken it in an abstract direction. It's just that now, from our perspective, it looks quite traditional, but at the time it wasn't. But the other thing I picked up from his painting was that he was very relaxed. And I think he was relaxed because he was always working. Yeah. He made so much work. I came away really with a whole new respect and love for Monet himself.
And I feel that you sort of actually consciously avoided using some of his motifs. Sort of, like you sat on the Japanese bridge rather than actually...
That was a bit rebellious,
yes.
wasn't it? Yes. Yeah, and whenever I found myself drawing a water lily flower, I stopped myself. Yeah.
I was wanting to talk a bit about drawing in your work. It seems that that's, if we look at your diptych over there, it feels to me that the drawing's been quite a critical part of that process of uniting the two canvases.
By drawing, do you mean lines?
The lines, yeah. This sort of cascade of sort of calligraphic lines, which seems to unite the two. I was wondering, did you put them? Did they come right at the end, or when did they?
Yeah, they came quite late on. And I often put these what you could call drawn lines, but drawn with paint, on in order to reassert my ownership of the work and to remind myself that this is a thing I'm making. It's not reality. It's not a pretend place. And the line is honestly, that's genuinely opening. The line is a moment of saying, hang on a minute, I've got some paint, I'm making a mark. This isn't the same as mimicking the world. That's important to me.
And it seems that sort of it emphasises the picture plane as well, sort of, which feels very different from Monet's work, where you're sort of entering into a scene. The lines seem to sort of sit on the surface.
That can be a thing. Yeah. Do you know, I don't really think that much about what I do. I just try and do it.
Do you think it's a mistake to think?
No, it's just a personal thing that I'm just not very intellectual. I just like to make things, really. And for some people thinking, I'll tell you what is important. We were going to talk about this, do you remember? Reading. Can we share this?
Absolutely.
Coll and I got together and have read together the journals of Eugène Delacroix. Anyone here read those? They're amazing. Yes?
In part.
Oh, well, this is actually abridged because it's the translation. This is my copy. Look how many post-it notes there are. And I nervously suggested that we read it together in case I thought you might not like him. But you did.
Yeah, we met up once a month, and
I worried that you wouldn't like Delacroix.
Yeah.
The man.
I thought he was amazing. Yeah.
And I do think that for an artist, it's important to read what other artists write, rather than what art historians write. Because I don't think art historians really know. They don't know about making. They know about the historical and the sociological side of things, but they don't know about the physicality of making.
And it becomes much more accessible, doesn't it? I mean, it's all,
Well, you just feel you're not the only one, and you read what another artist has written.
And that's what I found is extraordinary about Delacroix. Is he seemed very accessible and unpretentious.
It's as if he's sitting here talking to us, isn't it?
And there are other artists who's writing: Guston, Motherwell, Agnes Martin.
They're all great. Yeah. Some of these books, unfortunately, are out of print. Publishers, make note.
Couple in the room.
There's an Agnes Martin book, which I think was published about 15 years ago. You can't get it anymore. So you'd now have to pay something like £1,000 to get a second-hand copy. There's a book of Roy Oxlade's writings. You should think about getting that reprinted, because us artists, we really want access to these things. And it's odd, isn't it? Why do some books just not get printed again? Tell us.
Lack of demand.
Not enough people like you. That's so smart. I'm surprised by that. So I am a publisher. I'm going back to work tomorrow and investigating.
Yeah, but then if there's lack of demand, why are they so expensive on the second-hand market?
Dropping many up. Supply and demand. Scarcity.
Something I also wanted to ask you about was the elemental and the timeless. That's something I felt when I observed your work here.
Sorry, you just said...
Sorry, the elemental and the timeless. For example, you've got two paintings here which have the dance in the title, which I think is one of the most elemental human activities. And then we've got Twilight, which is at the far end, it's a beautiful painting, which is a landscape, but it's, for me, the landscape is beyond time and place.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a bit about the timeless and the elemental in your work?
No precious.
Time is a bit difficult thing to understand. I don't think anyone understands time.
I mean, by timeless, I suppose, I mean, it could be now, but it could be any time. I mean,
Well, I think it's terribly important as an artist to be as aware of the past as you are of the present. And I don't think you can make art that's of any value if you only focus on the present or only focus on the past. You have to have a mixture. And if you do make work that combines the past and the ever-moving present, it will hopefully have a timeless quality then. Work that's obsessed by being contemporary and modern tends to fall flat on its face about 10 years later.
it'll just become dated, I suppose.
Yeah, that's what I think. But you may not agree with this, people. I don't know. I came across that notion in Baudelaire's writings, the French poet who has written some wonderful essays about art, about painting and drawing, and he said he thought the formula was 50% the eternal in any art and 50% the contemporary. And obviously you accept that keeps changing what the contemporary is.
Yeah. And the contemporary being, I suppose, now.
Yes. What he called the contingent, I think.
Now rather than fashion.
Yeah.
And talking about time, I see your work also as being quite critical about conversations with other artists. It's often a starting point to quite a lot of your paintings. But sometimes this is actually sort of left far behind, sort of you'll be inspired by Watteau, but it'll develop in such a way that you'd never know that. I was just wondering whether you could talk about the role of other painters in your painting practice.
I like to play with how close can I get to copying without it being a copy. Or how far away can I get from referencing another artist while still referencing them? I don't like to think that anyone is off limits, if you like, for working from them. I mean, Rubens, it's a bit, in a way, a bit of an odd choice, Rubens, because he's so talented. And yet, it's good fun to pit yourself against Rubens and see if you can't do something with him, so to speak. And I always do encourage students to work from other artists and to go to the National Gallery and go to the Tate Gallery and always draw when you look at art. But why I bring it into my work is just that I want an excuse to paint.
So it's a way of getting started.
Yeah. And I do think that if you make any marks in your work that connect to something that you care about and that is something you've genuinely seen, that brings in energy. So sometimes I lack energy, so I'll pick up a funny old photograph of a Rubens painting, I'll glance at it and just do a bit of work. Then I can chuck it away and carry on. So you need a reason for your work to be alive. And sometimes that's looking at the old masters, for me. But I don't necessarily want people to know that I've worked from the old masters. I do think that, for example, if you know the Poussin Dance to the Music of Time, you would recognise it in that one. And I got a bit close to a copy in that one.
And these two dance paintings, the ones on either side, are they drawn from?
That's Rubens
Right.
there, and the far one is Poussin. But I don't think you need to know that.
Oh, can I ask in relation to this, and I'm sure there are questions at the end, but just to start, I'll forget. In Giverny, and it's in relation to my copies and that sort of thing, how difficult was it? Bearing in mind, Giverny, as the entire oeuvre and the entire bodywork came out, that is arguably his most iconic,
Yes.
all the Waterloo, blah, 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 and they are based on the very specific things.
Yes.
How difficult was it to reference that without doing a pastiche and doing a neo Monet? Because you want to be inspired by it, and you're looking at exactly what he looked at. How difficult was it just, as you said, the moment you went near a water, you went like that.
Yes.
So how difficult was it to create something new in something that's so, I'm going to say chocolate boxy, like a constable they do it.
yeah.
How does it do a constable that isn't a constable, or how to do it?
I do love Constable, by the way.
As you should. How many was in that sort of tension between you?
Yeah, there was a lot of tension, and I got pretty desperate, to be absolutely honest.
Right.
Yeah, I'm very low at certain moments. But I think you can never do anything of any worth unless you get pretty low. Well, really, it's going to be difficult, isn't it? And I don't think I could properly understand what I'd learned there or where I would take it until after I got back to London.
Yeah. And
But I was very aware of that problem.
Yeah, totally. Because otherwise you end up doing a chocolate box pastiche.
Yeah, there's almost no other artist that would provide quite such a challenge as
But also just that particular
when you're-
environment.
Yeah, when
Maybe
you're there.
it's so embedded in that body of work, which are even commercially his most expensive works, and just visually, everybody knows the Waterloo series and that.
Yes.
And they get abstracted more and more as he went. If there's been less and less reference to the specific, they became about light and colour and shade and such like.
But I had for 5 months before that been an artist in residence at the King's Gallery, where I was asked to draw from Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci. So, you know, Monet, Michelangelo. In a way, I'm getting a bit blasé. Yeah. But thank you for the question.
Sorry to be interrupting.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Do you think we should open it up to questions?
We absolutely. There was one final question though before we open it up, which I wanted to ask, because you teach a lot of young artists and artists who are starting out.
Oh, yeah.
And I was wanting to ask, what advice would you give to a young artist?
Do something else. No. The thing I noticed that I wish people had more of was patience. Yeah? And an understanding that anything that you want to do well is going to take time, and you have to work hard. Where's the work ethic gone? I mean, we really, no one would think you could be a concert violinist just like that. But people think they can be an artist. It's not. It's very hard to be an artist. And it can take a very long time, and you need to work hard. So patience, perseverance, look at a lot of art, but also listen to music, look at films, and always try to think, well, why does this film work and that one doesn't? You know, all of the arts are connected, I think, and poetry is a very, very wonderful way into painting. All these things that aren't obvious, I think. I mean, a poem is a weird thing because it is literally physically made up of words, and you read the words out, but it can trigger another sensation. And I think the best art can do that too. So you can learn about painting through reading poetry, I believe.
Well, I think that's a lovely place to open it up to more questions from the floor. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for a really fascinating conversation. Going back to this painting you referenced earlier, how do you judge whether an abstract work of art has worked or not, for those of us outside of the world of abstraction, I think the thing we're intimidated by with regard to the concept is how to judge whether something works or doesn't work, what it means. And secondly, do you believe it's possible through abstract painting to capture emotions and feelings as well as fragments of things that actually exist in the world? Or are you sort of in some way bringing them both together?
I think, like all things, the more you know about it, the better you can judge it. So I think that those people who don't understand abstraction and are maybe afraid of it, even though they'd like to make it, haven't looked at it enough. I think, because it's physically possible to make an abstract painting, we could all go and do some splishy-spotchy thing, couldn't we? People then confuse that with the actual real activity of making an abstract work of art. And if we do that when we've never even looked at much abstract art, then we're in trouble. So I think the first thing that anyone who wants to make abstract art needs to do is look at an awful lot of abstract art. And starting off, I think, with the American abstract expressionists. But before that, Gustave Moreau, he made abstracts. Did any of you know that? They're extraordinary. Gustave Moreau.
Whisper now in the
Whistler.
in the daytime.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So I think there's that, but how you know whether something's got value?
Why did you paint over the earlier versions of that? There must have been a reason.
Yeah, they were clunky. It's a feeling, but it's a feeling based on experience. And I kept that picture for probably 5 years, and I kept getting it out and having another look. And every time I did that, I couldn't bear to change it, because I thought, well, maybe it is okay then, after 5 years of looking. But it's not a precise thing. And
is making abstract paintings perhaps a way of avoiding the trap of skill?
it can be, and also there can be the trap of, oh, I know this is, I don't know, a mountain with a cow in front of it. So you then no longer care enough about how the colours are interacting, and so you lose out on beauty. If you know what things are, you're not as critical of it in a way. I think it's very, very, very hard to make a good abstract painting. Way harder than I had realised when I started.
There's one right now who might admire currently in terms of abstract art. Artists being mad.
Yeah. I mean, some of them are dead. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's
Well, Joan Mitchell, who lived quite near where Monet lived, Helen Frankenthaler, Franz Klein, Robert Motherwell, and more recently, some lesser-known people, Varda Caivano. Anyone know her work? She's at the Lisson Gallery. There's a lot of really, really great art being made at the moment, I think, surprisingly. So I don't sort of keep all their names particularly in my mind, but I'm also interested, though, I'm looking at some of these pictures, you almost start thinking about cave paintings as well, don't you? With that one over there, it's got a feeling of an old surface, which was perhaps interfered with hundreds of thousands of years ago, too.
And perhaps that goes back to the idea of the timeless.
It can do, yeah.
So it's such a fantastic exhibition, and I hope this doesn't sound like a kind of greedy question, but how's the experience of putting this together, creating these works of art, in terms of how it might influence what you do next?
Oh, that's such a good question. I'm really, really excited to do some new work now. Yeah, I mean, I think it's very, very good to see your work in another place. You see it more clearly, but it also makes you think, okay, now I want to move on. I'm not that I make very different work, but I'm very excited now to get back into my studio. But I don't think I could have been this excited if I hadn't had to put it up here.
And do you think it could be very different?
I don't know. It might be, but no, not terribly different.
I think that would be.
done?
Yeah, I think. I think we should look at your paintings, and I would just like to thank everybody
thank
so
you for
much for
coming.
coming. Could I just thank Vivienne?
Vivienne?
Vivienne, thank you so much. And most importantly, thank you, Sarah, for this incredible exhibition and talking with us tonight.
Thank you for being here.